trying to see whether I can reach up and cut some roses, and I've decided that they are just too tall. Hello there and welcome. I'm Julie from Julie Davis Flower Workshops and Flower Start, the online flower arranging classes. It's our 1 year anniversary, the anniversary of going live from my garden, or whichever garden I happened to be in at the time. We started, I think the first video went out on the 21st of June 2022, and here we are a year later. So let me know in the comments whether you're watching live, leave me the hashtag live, and if you're catching up later on today, next week, next month, next year, leave me the hashtag replay and share with me what your news is. How long have you been watching my channel? Now, I just want to make sure as well that you can hear me and see me okay. I'm just about to check down my cleavage. But my microphone is on. I thought it might look better if you couldn't see the big black microphone. I'm hoping that my t-shirt isn't affecting the sound too much, but no doubt you will let me know if you can't hear me properly. So today's project, I'm going to revamp some of my flowers rather than cutting flowers from my garden. It's that time of the year when everything is in abundance, and I've kind of got too many flower arrangements at home, and combined with teaching my classes, there is an awful lot of flower going on at the moment. So I thought rather than me chopping stuff in the garden, I would just give my existing flower arrangement a little bit of a makeover. Oh, thank you, Joan, for confirming that you can hear me. That is great news. And Joan, you'll see that I have rather controversially named this video "Is Flower Arranging Only for Old Women?" And I thought we would have a little bit of discussion. So perhaps you let me know, perhaps you don't want to say how old you are or what age you were when you started flower arranging, but how long have you been flower arranging for? And let's compare notes. Time you retired, oh dear. I've still got my little bit of a cough going on. It sounds like I'm smoking 20 cigarettes a day, a real sort of throaty cough at the moment. So I get this general idea that the perception is that flower arranging is sort of something your gran does or your great aunt does. And it's not something that people who are younger are immediately attracted to. So you're saying, Joan, that it was 15 to 20 years ago. Let me think when I first started flower arranging. I got married when I was 29. So that was October. I was 29 in the October. And I think very shortly after that, perhaps the following summertime, that I signed up for my first flower arranging class. So my husband was a very keen gardener. He still is a keen gardener. Well, perhaps not quite so keen these days. And I don't know what it was, a conversation, discussion. I've always been quite interested in sort of craft and things like that. So I don't know how it cropped up, but anyway, I went across to find a flower arranging class, and there was one at our local college. So it was a college in Canterbury, I think sixth form college, or a sort of further education college where people learnt trades and things like that. So they had a floristry qualifications happening at the college, and I went to an evening class there, and I will tell you what, I was absolutely hooked from the moment I started. So I was, let's say, was I 29? I was possibly 30 when I started flower arranging. And I don't know whether it's something that you start later in life, because perhaps when you are younger, you've got more interesting and exciting things to spend your money on. Perhaps your sort of flower arranging career coincides with when you've got a home, whether you've bought it yourself, you've got married, you're living with somebody, and perhaps it starts at that point and it's part of that homemaking thing. So perhaps at the same time as you cooking and perhaps interior design, you're painting rooms, you're looking at curtains, you're looking at cushion covers, whether flower arranging is that sort of add-on to that. And I guess I was quite lucky because those years ago, flowers weren't as expensive as they are today. So I was able to, my husband grew flowers, I arranged them, or I bought my flowers from the supermarket or the florist and went on from there. So I'm quite interested to know, yes, when you first started and what it was that prompted you to start flower arranging. So I think probably for me, to begin with, it was a life change. So I'd gone from being a single career woman to getting married and, home and family being at the centre of things a little bit. Now, when I'm going to revamp my flower arrangement, I am slowly moving the blue things into my house. For springtime, I had lots of green vases and green glassware. If you follow me on my Friday Facebook Lives at lunchtime, you will have seen me a little while ago putting in my spring stuff on my kitchen windowsill. So I've decided to hail in with our anniversary broadcast some of the blues to see me through the summer and the summer holidays. So this is a little blue jug that I got from a charity shop. It's what you might recognise as the barrelware, woodsware. This is actually called Iris, woodsware Iris, and I guess it's that sort of catering pack of milk jug. You can imagine that being in a school canteen, something like that, or perhaps even a village hall. So I'm going to arrange my flowers in this, and to stop them falling over, I'm going to create a grid using the pot tape. So this is the waterproof tape. So if you're used to using flower foam, this will be the kind of tape that you would have taped your flower foam in position. And if you're going foam free or trying to go foam free like I am, you've probably still got a drawer full of the tape and you don't quite know what to do with it. So what I'm going to do is to take it and make a grid using the tape. Now the only downside with this tape is that when you stick it onto your container, can you see the little dark line there? It's not massively attractive. You can get a clear tape, but with the tape I've got that's clear doesn't seem to be as sticky as this tape. Oh, I just caught that with a long comment there, that you started flower arranging because you thought you weren't good at anything. That is interesting. So on the basis that the flowers were perfect already, you thought you couldn't do any harm to them. I'm going to have to wait until another comment comes up and I can go back and read what you said properly. And I think you mentioned your children as well in that comment. We'll have to have a look back at that. So do you feel, a question back, do you feel that after all your 15 or so years of flower arranging that you have mastered the art of it and you're more confident? Has it opened doors for you? What has it led to? Are you going to a flower club? That's a social thing as well. And again, is that an age thing? Come a long way from then. So has it been a confidence builder for you then? That might be the thing, isn't it? Perhaps we all have to find our niche, something we can become absorbed in. And once you master that, your confidence grows. And does it grow in other areas as well? That might well be the answer. And I guess if we had been younger women when we started flower arranging, we would be doing other things. We might have been, going out to the pub, going out for meals, going out for drinks, that kind of thing. So I think it probably does come from some sort of home-based activity. But interesting that you say that it has built your confidence up, because it's like all things, all clubs, all societies, once you sort of get in with not in with the in crowd, but once you get in with what you're doing, so for me, it sort of opens up other doors. Have you found that? So I did my floristry class. I'll have to show you on my, perhaps I'll share this. I've got my slippers on, it's not a very good idea. We had loads and loads of rain this morning, so I'm trying to keep my feet off the wet, damp patio. So when I did my flower class, as I say, the first one I did, I was absolutely blown away, absolutely loved it. But when I look back at the photographs of the things I made, they are pretty 100% hideous. But I was so pleased with them. And I used, the teacher would demonstrate, and I used to do these little drawings, so I want to remember how to do them next time. And I think I may even, after class, have coloured the drawings in, I'm not entirely sure. But I have definitely still got those photographs from that first class. And I think I have still got my notes from that first class. So if I find them and you fancy a laugh, I will put them in the community tab page. I'm not going to say when, because it may be some time before I track them down again. Or if you're a member of my Facebook page, I might have shared them before on the Facebook group. You can, if you click through under the description of the video, you can find the link to my Facebook group. So I'm putting my taped grid on here. Now I'm getting a problem here because the next line wants to go across, needs to go down the spout. Much easier to do this on something that isn't actually a proper jug. But so I went to the flower class, and then the lady who taught me turned out that she was sort of quite, she was obviously a floristry teacher, a trainer, but she had connections with the flower clubs, so NAFAS, the National Association of Flower Arrangement Societies. Gosh, I'll probably get drummed out, won't I? I can't remember what it stands for. So she did tell me that there was a flower club in the town where I'd gone for my classes, but she said also there was a flower club in the town where I lived. Now, it took me quite a while to track down the clubs because I think it's a bit like a secret code. I think once you're in the club, you know all about it, don't you? But if you're new to things, it can be quite hard to check them out, and especially it was pre-social media days. So we used to, what I used to do, I still go to the library quite a lot, but our library had a book of all the clubs and societies in town, so I had to ask for the book and then flick through and find, at least I knew there was a flower arranging club in town, so I knew it would be there somewhere, and from there I got the details of the flower arranging club, and I cannot quite remember whether I phoned the secretary up or I just turned up. Anyway, I went to my first meeting, and as it happened, the first meeting I went to, they were doing an imposed class. That's when they give you all the materials, so you just turn up with a pair of scissors. And because I assumed, perhaps like you, that all the ladies were going to be really old and perhaps quite posh, I dressed up a little bit. So this must have been autumn time, I think, because I can remember going in. I had at that time I had a long sort of thick grey coat, and when I got married I had this really lovely velvet scarf that I wore in the evening when we sort of did the party part of the wedding, and I wore that, so I was doing my version of looking glammed up. And when I got into the room, I realised that everybody was quite normal, and perhaps I was ever so slightly overdressed. So it's that thing, isn't it? Don't have any preconceptions about what people should do. But I can remember we did something, and you were giving us all these little components. So I think we had a little terracotta pot, and we had some sticks. We definitely had an apple, because the chairman of the flower club was from a farming family, and their crop, well, one of their crops was apples, so we were given these apples. And as you know, the committee was sort of welcoming me, watching what everyone was doing. I think they probably twigged that I kind of knew what I was doing, or I had an aptitude for it, and that then opened other doors as well. And so I then, every time the chairman gave out notices and there was this happening and a demonstration and an outing out and all the things, I was absolutely 100% there. And then through the flower club, I then became the secretary. So I must have been the secretary for about 20 years. So I was only there about 3 or 4 years, and I became secretary. And then through there, I met one of my friends who I then now go thrifting with. So it's all this nice connections. But I will say, if you are, these days we talk a lot about loneliness. And I think perhaps, lockdown, everything like that is sort of isolated us all a little bit, hasn't it? So I would say that if you even have the vaguest interest in flower arranging and a flower class, you could either take yourself off to a flower class. So local adult education centre may have classes, or you may find there's a florist that runs classes, or a flower farmer that runs classes, or you may like the familiarity of going to a monthly meeting, and then you're meeting the same people month on month. And I do think that if you are looking to meet people, that it's the repetition, isn't it? So I can remember when I first moved to town and we first got married, the way we met people was we went to the same pub on a Friday night at about the same time. And if you keep doing that, you'll start to see familiar faces, and people are more likely to talk to you. Or you pick a coffee shop you like going to, and you just go there at vaguely the same time on vaguely the same day, and there'll be other people following that routine as well. So that's been really good. It's a really good way of meeting people you wouldn't normally meet. So it's a great mixer, I think, belonging to a flat, or probably belonging to any club. All sorts of people will be interested in the theme of whatever particular club that you're in. So that brings me on to another question. We talk about being a flower arranger, but what does it actually mean? So there's my jug. Can you see I've got the grids on it? Can you see I've got this really horrible line across here? So to disguise this horrible line, what I sometimes do is add more tape to make it look more intentional. So I'm going to do that and then peel off the tape and flick it back into position. So yes, what is a flower arranger? So again, you sort of got those connotations of great Auntie Joan with her big hat on doing the flowers at church. But flower arranging, you know, what is it? I don't know, answers on a postcard, please. For me, it doesn't have to be that you are creating something that might look as if it was a huge pedestal for a, you know, in church or a wedding or something. I would say it's quite an open, generic term whereby you are doing something other than cutting and plonking your flowers, although, you know, to an extent that is flower arranging. So I would say that although it's a sort of quite an old-fashioned title, it covers anyone. You don't have to be a flower arranger, you don't have to belong to a flower club, you don't have to be on a church flower arranging committee, you don't have to be good at it, you just need to be able to enjoy doing it. So if you perhaps buy, you can see it's overdoing it with the tape a bit, you know, if you're buying a bunch of flowers when you do your weekly shop, you know, you're buying lilies from the supermarket or chrysanthemums or carnations, something like that, and you take them home, you know, I think by definition you're a flower arranger because you're not going to leave them in packaging, are you? What you'll be doing is taking that, as soon as you put your frozen food away and the stuff that needs to go in the fridge, take the cellophane off, find yourself a clean vase, fill it with water, recut your stems, pull off any leaves that are going to sit inside your vase, add the flower food, Bob's your uncle. So that's part of flower arranging, is just knowing how to look after your flowers. And I think to begin with, well, what we all do, sometimes it's a time-related issue as well, is you cut these ends off your flowers because they do dry up a little bit, they don't take up water quite so well. And you put them in, maybe if you just sort of getting them in a big bunch and cutting the ends and letting them fall where they fall, well, you have arranged it. Well, that's the beginning of flower arranging. I think the more you do that, and the more, you know, you're interested in the flowers and you know what you like and what you don't like, or you've got a particular colour you like, I think there just comes a stage where there's sort of this light bulb moment and you're thinking, you know, I'm spending, you know, £10 a week, £5 a week on flowers, or perhaps you're buying, you know, daffodils, you know, pound a bunch in the springtime, and you think, you know, is this my hard-earned cash I'm spending? You know, are your flowers lasting long enough? What can you do to make your flowers last longer? And if you know all those little hints, tips and tricks about making your flowers last longer, I would say that's making you a flower arranger. And if you want to do something a bit different, you know, and you want to be more creative, so for me, I wouldn't get too het up on the fact that you think you have to go to a flower club to arrange flowers. You absolutely do not have to. And then, you know, why do we arrange flowers? Why do you arrange flowers? What do you get out of it? Why do you do it? Is it because you want your house to be a lovely welcome for your friends and family that are visiting? Do you do it for you because it makes you feel good, that you've invested a bit of time in your home? Can you see that? That's the before. And that's the after. I've peeled off all the little tails and cut them off so that if you see the tape, it now kind of looks intentional. It just looks like my jug's got a band around the top. So I'm going to do that. So it might be you're sort of doing it for other people. Yes, I'm getting there. So let me know in the comments what your favourite flowers are. But all those sort of suggestions I've made, it's all about other people, isn't it? You want your home to look nice for your visitors, for your family. What about what you want to get out of it? And I think for me, this is the greatest bit about flower arranging, or, you know, any creative activity, whether you're into sewing or knitting or painting or interior design. All roses, and we got We've got peonies as well. I haven't got my glasses on. I have got my glasses on. I'm just trying to check out the name there. Peonies are beautiful, aren't they? Such a short season. So the peonies have gone over in our garden. If you want any advice about peony care, check out my video on cut flower care, and also the last few live videos I've done. We've talked about peonies and picking them when they get to marshmallow stage. Roses are an absolute classic. So of course, roses grown in the garden, a totally different thing, aren't they? For the roses you get in the supermarket or the florist. Absolutely wonderful. So it's middle of rose season at the moment, isn't it? So it is rather lovely. I'm not going to keep doing that tape, you know, like watching paint dry. I think probably when I put these flowers on the side, I'm just going to have the jug that way around rather than that way around. So next thing is to put some water in. So yes, what about flower arranging for yourself? And I would say this, you know, we hear a lot, don't we, about self-care. And what does self-care mean to you? Does it mean going to the health spa? Does it mean having a really big bit of chocolate cake when you go out with friends? You love orchids too, but can't manage to keep any of them alive. So I don't know if anyone else has got any tips. I am not very good at pot plant. Anything that's still in soil isn't really my area of expertise. But the only thing I know about orchids is you're supposed not to overwater them. The orchid slayer. I can imagine. I was gifted orchids for my birthday last year. And you know, when you get given something and you think, it's really kind and these are really beautiful, but they're not going to live in my house. And I did try and look after them. So I think orchids are the bane of everyone's life here. So if you've got them in a pot plant, get me giving you gardening expertise advice. Well, I don't know anything about it. They always have, there's not much soil, is it? And it's quite dry. So my understanding is that you shouldn't overwater your orchids, and I think you have to wait till the soil's gone really dry and then douse them and then let it dry out again. And they're always sold, if you notice, in those clear plastic pots, which are then put inside a decorative pot. I think the roots need to have light to them, so the fact we put the clear pot inside a decorative pot is sort of starving them of light. It's like we're sort of going for the look of the pot rather than what actually the plant needs. So yes, I cannot help you at all. Of course, what I like doing whenever I get orchids is, I don't like it as a pot plant. And I would, you know, give me an orchid. Yeah, if they're too wet, they rot. Yes, we're in agreement there. See, I quite often use orchids in floral jewellery, for instance, so lots of wirework. So those of you who have been to my Zoom flower classes, we did a session, what must have been a couple of years ago now, on making floral jewellery with the decorative wires that are crunched up and then gluing flowers on top. So, for instance, orchids are really great for that because they're a long-lasting flower. Dab of floral glue on the back, you can make a ring, make a hair slide, make a necklace, bracelet, whatever. So that's what I would do if someone gave me a pot plant. I secretly just want to cut the flowers off and do something crafty and creative with it. So is that, as we were talking about well-being, weren't we? So what does well-being mean to you? Self-care, you know, the bubble bath, the fact you're going to read a book by candlelight and all kinds of things like that. So I would say that I enjoy my flower arranging because I want to do something creative. You know, you start off with the raw ingredients and you finish up with something that hopefully is more beautiful than you started with. Of course, I want my house to look nice. It pleases me. I like, you know, giving a nice welcome to friends that come and visit. But also, I find it quite a meditative action. I'm not talking about actual meditation, but it's that mindfulness. Oh, treating yourself to fresh flowers every couple of weeks. That sounds fabulous. So because I do have a lot of flowers because I teach, what I have started doing is sometimes I can't always get to the shop to buy my flowers, so I treat myself to a delivery. So here in England, there's a company called Freddie's Flowers, and I have a subscription to them which you can turn on and off depending on when you want your flowers delivered. So I love that, because someone else is doing the hard work for me. I pay my money. I don't have to have the fret and you know, I don't have to think about the colours, the selection, how many I need to buy. You know, when you stand at the supermarket trying to think, well, I've got £12 to spend and I can have 2 of that and 1 of that and 3 of that, and it's all just very complicated. So, and I quite like the fact is something gets delivered. So I'm getting on quite friendly terms with the delivery guy. He rings my bell on a Friday. He was a bit late last week. I thought he'd forgotten about me. So it's even that connection as well, that I am, someone rings a bell, you answer it, you say hello to somebody, da-di-da-di-da, you sort of use little connections along the way. So I'm taking out my greenery first of all. I've got some oak here, putting it in there. So that's why, and I quite like it's like I'm giving myself a gift, because it comes in a box, and I can unwrap it, and then get on with the flowers. So it is rather nice. But as well as the sort of, when you've bought something, it's supposed to make your hormones, you get a buzz from it. It's actually the doing as well. So the fact is that, obviously I'm here talking to you on the camera, but it just gives you a moment, I think, because you have to concentrate on what you're doing. It doesn't have to be difficult, but you have to be in the moment to do it. And I quite like that side of things, that it is a mindful activity, engaging the senses. And I think probably that is the key to well-being a little bit, that you just need to stop and be in the moment, and not be having your brain or your list of things to do sort of racing ahead of you. So I think that's quite nice as well. So it does engage your senses. So it's the sight, we look at the flowers and you are noticing them. It's that saying, isn't it? Oops, petals are flying off. Stop and smell the roses. Yes, I know it's a peony. But would we actually look at a peony unless we were arranging it? I think sometimes, you may have heard me say this before, keep bemoaning my garden. We have a lovely garden. Do you see the birds flying past? I'm sitting over the pergola and there's a sparrow's nest up above. So, you sometimes you sort of just take things in and your eye just goes all the way around and just think, oh, it's just, that's the garden, it's what I'm familiar with, it's green. And I'm always saying, but there's no flowers in my garden. But when you actually go and look, you can find things in the garden, you notice things. And I think that's it, isn't it? Just to use your sight to actually notice, to stop and notice. And of course, if you're really into meditation, you could do a whole meditation on a peony or whatever. But I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, yes, my peony probably should really be on the compost heap. It's a little bit old now. But the fact, it's got ruffled feathers, I can see it's pink. And actually, as the sunlight's catching it, it's pretty much as I'm seeing it, because as it's aged, the pinkness is sort of the saturation of the pink is right close into the flower head. And then just the edges, I don't know whether it's the variety or if it is getting old, there's just like a whiteness around the edge. So it's sort of got a halo effect. So it's, you actually stop and look and think about it. And then I'm thinking, I wonder what that variety is. I can never remember varieties. But it spurs you on. And I do think that perhaps you might be flicking through a magazine, or you might see a book or something, vase of flowers in an advert or something. And it just makes you notice things. It is a pretty ombre effect. And we're saying as well, it's beautiful. You've got a few in the garden, but you can't bear to pick them. Well, things don't pick them, but look at them. Just sort of commit them to your photographic memory. I take photographs a lot, much to the bemusement of the rest of my family. But sometimes I feel that I need to take a photograph so that I actually do stop and look, because otherwise sometimes you can just sort of scan everything. And by actually taking a photograph and composing the shot and pressing the button to focus it, and then pressing the shutter to... I'm doing all this on my phone, I haven't got my fancy camera anymore. But again, that can just make you look. It makes you stop. It makes you appreciate. And then your mind tunes into other things. So for instance, I can see this flower. Quite often when you're given flowers or you buy flowers, that's a classic thing we do. But I didn't actually know that this has got a scent. You're asking about whether I need to split the stems. And on the whole, I don't split the stems. What I do is cut them at an angle. So rather than cutting them straight across, you just end up as a circle. If you imagine you dipped your stem in ink and did little dots around it, it would be a circle. Cut it at an angle, and that gives you an oval shape. So it's got greater surface area for picking up for the water. If you felt that you needed to, I sometimes do this on woody stems, that you could slice into the stem. And the best way of doing that, I've got a floristry knife, or if you had a really sharp vegetable knife, just sort of split it a little bit, a couple of centimetres or so. If you do it with your scissors, it sort of goes a bit skew-with. But you could do that. But I would say on the whole with peonies, it's got a little split bit there. Can you see that? But I wouldn't, not that I wouldn't bother, but I haven't shown, these peonies here must be coming up for 10, I think they seriously are 10 days old. So they've lived as long as they have without me splitting it. And this is part of the thing as well, what I quite enjoy about flower arranging, is there's no one answer that suits all occasions. So you're using your grey matter as well. So I was talking about buying flowers in the supermarket and having to mental arithmetic and what am I going to buy that and thinking about your colours. But it's all those little hints and tips that you might have picked up from your favourite magazine, online, in a book, and you're trying to work out what you can do and what you can, you know, what knowledge you can store, or whether you want to write it down. Does this work for me? Or perhaps if you always we're coming to hydrangea season at the moment, that's always a question I get in class. Is my hydrangea to do? So it's those little things that you just think, it's not just about the flowers and it being, you know, an easy fix or a simple fix. Sometimes they need special care requirements, like your orchids. And it's just having the courage and I think the more you know, every little bit of knowledge you have sort of spurs on to wanting another little bit of knowledge and another little bit of knowledge. And, you know, one day we all become experts. So I would say that I don't split my stems. So what do you do then to stop your hydrangeas wilting? That is the question. Have a think about that. Let me know in the comments. So what I like doing as well is I've got a snapdragon. It's probably gone over. But again, if you watch my Friday Facebook Lives, you'll know that doesn't bother me. So what I like to do here is some of the little bottom flowers have just got a little bit of a brown tinge, but the top looks okay. So I'm going to take those off. And then the stem has gone a bit slimy from being in the water for so long. I'm going to get rid of the total slime. I've got my bucket under here. And I just put it into my container like that. So how are we going to stop your hydrangeas wilting? First thing you need to do is think about, let's assume you're picking them from your garden, is that when you pick them from the garden, did you see last week's video when I was talking about extreme heat? You know, here in England we've had 2 days of hot sunshine, qualifies as extreme heat. I would say you need to pick your flowers from your garden in the cool of the day. Great tip there, putting them in hot water and then in cold. That's a good way of sort of open up all those water vessels. So first of all, before I did that, I would pick in the cool of the day. My preference is to pick first thing in the morning because I think you've had the cool of the night as well as the cool of the early morning. If you pick in the cool of the evening, your flowers haven't had that much time to recover. So I'd pick early morning before it got hot, and then put your flowers in. It's almost, yep. That's a really good trick as well for roses that are sort of wilted. You know, they sort of get a floppy head. I would put your flowers straight into water. So, you know, we've got this idea, haven't we? We're going to be swishing around the garden with our summer skirts on and our basket of flowers. If you like wearing skirts, of course. But you need to be a bit more practical than that. You need to have your bucket filled with water, do your cutting. So hydrangeas can be prone to flopping, and my advice is don't put them too early in the season. They need to have a sort of degree of maturity about them, and it's almost at the point where it's not like the first. I would wait until they've sort of become established in the garden. It's not just like the first bloom, and you want to have them in the garden. Remember as well that hydrangeas, we're getting a bit technical here. I think, the flowers that we think of flowers aren't actually the flowers. It's like the bract around the edge. The flowers are the tiny little bits around the seed head. And that's the way, is to put your flower head in water, shower it down, recut the stem, and then put it proper way up into the water. So that particular flower takes water through its petals, let's call them as well. And I would also take off quite a lot of the leaves. Normally we just take off the leaves that are going to be inside the jug, your vase, but I would take off higher leaves as well so that the water went straight to the hydrangea head. You could use the hot water treatment to sort of shock it into, expanding the vessels so it can take up the water. But I would say if you've got a hydrangea that you've picked and it's been quite successful in your vase for a day or two, and then all of a sudden it flops, as it may well do on a hot summer day, I would just take that flower out of the water, out of your vase, plunge the head into the bucket of, a fresh bucket of water, recut the stem and keep it somewhere cool for a couple of hours, and you'll see it rejuvenate. And if it keeps flopping, sometimes you just have to give up. And sometimes you may think, I'm enjoying the new season of hydrangeas, but I'm just going to wait, a couple of more weeks before I start picking them up and bringing them indoors. So, yes, it's all trial and error. And sometimes it'll work and sometimes it won't. And you don't know what that poor flower's gone through and whether it's been cared for properly on the plant and all that kind of stuff. There's lots of factors to keep under control. It's a bit like when you've got your favourite recipe at home, birthday cake. Always make a Victoria's sandwich cake with different flavours in it. But you've been making that recipe since you were 7 years old, to the point where you don't actually need to look at the recipe anymore. You can just do it off without referring back to the recipe. And then one day your cake would have risen this much, and then the other day, next day, it's like really, really shallow. And sometimes things just go wrong, don't they? And I think that is the joy of flowers. They keep you on your toes, and again, that is keeping all that grey matter in your head, alive and kicking, so you can enjoy it. And that is why I say flower arranging isn't just for old ladies. We could all benefit. Oh, look at that. I've just taken that out of the vase and all the petals have fallen off. I've got my own little confetti party. Oh, I was saying about the scent, wasn't I? It's, I didn't realise that they were scented. One thing I did realise, though, this arrangement at the weekend did have some stocks in it, and I was working on my desk, because I've got this on my desk, and there was an awful stink. And you sort of think, these flowers are supposed to be perfumed, and they stink to high heaven. And it was the stalks. I did think perhaps it was the water had gone off, and I did have some alliums on the side that got that oniony scent. But the stems, when I took them out, the flower heads had all dried up and gone over. And the stems had gone all smushy and mushy, and they were just absolutely horrible. Yes, they have got a very delicate scent. It's right. And actually, is it sort of almost like the smell of cloves? It is rather lovely. So here I am decanting one from the other. So grabbing that, I've got it was a dog walk, and I picked up some oak leaves. I don't normally use oak leaves in this arrangements, but they've been rather good. Oh, and segueing into something else. If you're interested in preserving your greenery with using glycerin, now's the time to do it. It's this time of the year, June, July time, if you're living in the same part of the world as I do, in the Northern Hemisphere. Don't leave it any later, and you can preserve it. It'll get lovely brownish tones, and then you can use it in your autumn arrangement. In the autumn time you want to use the autumn leaves, and you pick them and they all fall off the branches. You need to fake it up. That's an awful lot of flower arranging is about. It's just faking it up and making it look like that sort of occurred naturally. So now is the time to do it. So talking about alliums, there is the lovely allium. Again, these are going over a little bit, but again, the beauty of the allium, when you look at it, when it first grows in the garden, is quite a tight ball. And then the individual flowers open out, so it sort of changes colours. I missed that question, Joan. You were asking me about foliage for arrangements. I'll have to wait. You'll have to comment again. I need sound, really, don't I, every time someone comments. So that's, this is probably at the end of its life for a vase, but I just think that's really interesting to look at. And the seed heads starting to develop, and it's almost like little pepper seeds. What leaves can we do that with where we... Oh, glycerining. So the glycerin comes in a bottle. So I buy my glycerin. Usually, in past years, I've been able to buy the glycerin from the chemist or the pharmacy. So Boots the chemist or wherever you could pick up your prescription medication from. But I will say that last year when I went to look for it, I could not find it anywhere. So it's normally next to the cough medicine. And so I think I bought it online. You can search for it, glycerin, with an E or without an E, but I spell it with an E. And then it's 2 parts boiling water to 1 part glycerin. So the glycerin, normally the bottle I buy is about 200 mils. So what I do is I boil the kettle, put 400 mils into a jug of boiled water, and then you pour your glycerin in. I think you need boiling water because the glycerin's all sticky, and it's sort of, you need to melt it down a bit. That's probably not the right word. And then you would recut your stems and put your flowers in the mix, and you just wait, and you can sort of see the leaves, the flowers, I mean the leaves, you can see the leaves changing colour. So if you are interested in finding out what flowers, leaves are suitable, you could go back and watch the video. I'll try and remember to put a link to the video. I've done 2 videos. One was the original quite short video, and then it's probably one of the videos I had most comments on, and then a sort of follow-up video afterwards. But you would need to pick a leaf that was quite robust. So the glycerin is quite thick. I've tried doing eucalyptus before, but it didn't work for me. I think the size of the leaf was too small and the mixture's quite heavy, and it's sort of like it was just pulling the leaves off and down. But what have I done successfully? I've done oak leaves, I've done hornbeam and beech, they're quite similar. I've done fig leaves before. If you want to make a nice sort of, the big leaves and the fatsia, they go a lovely chestnut brown. And they're quite floppy though, big leaves in the flower arrangement, but I was doing them to sort of put down a table centrepiece, so it's like big handprints going down a table centrepiece. So yes, that worked out quite well. Ivy works reasonably well. I'm looking around my garden for inspiration. Bay, laurel, that kind of thing. So sort of a robust leaf, and I would say not a small leaf. So cutting my stem ends here. You can see what I'm doing. I'm just finding a hole and plonking it in. I'm going to end up with quite a flower heavy, because my previous arrangement was quite an even mix of foliage and flower, and now I'm going to go, I'm sort of showcasing the flowers that are left. I've got alstroemeria here, and the little leaves at the top are, showing their age. If I just trim them off, we can all pretend that this is a flower that's got a little bit more life in it, like that. So yeah. I'm going to show you the side now. That's got all the tape hanging down. I have to concentrate on this side of the arrangement. And look, I've even made some notes. What have we been talking about? Ha! What's the point of flower arranging? And does it lead on to anything? Do you have to, if you go to, I've just found something in the compost bucket here, another allium. I might retrieve that from the compost bucket and put it in there. So it's a misconception that if you are interested in flower arranging, that you must want, therefore, to become a florist. I will say that over the course of the years, some people that I've taught have gone on to run their own businesses doing floristry work. Wedding is the most usual, but I had one lady and she made a very successful business in doing funeral flowers. And she absolutely loved doing that. So, hello Rebecca, if you're watching. So my answer is to that. What does it lead to? Well, it doesn't have to lead to anything. It could be that this is your hobby, and what it leads to is a long, happy, fulfilled life where you have travelled the country meeting other flower fans. You've been to church flower festivals, perhaps you go to a national festival, perhaps you start going to competitions, perhaps you start competing in competitions. And what I like about flower arranging is that it kind of goes with my hobbies as well, which is mainly day trips out, cups of tea and pieces of cake. Going to stately homes and gardens and things like that. So it's always, just a little bit of something you can pick up. And even if you're, going to a stately home, they always have flower arrangements. Sometimes they're real flowers, sometimes they're fake flowers, but it's quite nice as well to see what someone else does with their flowers. It gives you a few ideas. Oh, you think, I didn't think of putting those colours together. Or, how have they done that? So it does sort of become the sort of launch pad for lots of other things that you might enjoy doing. But equally, if you find an aptitude and if you have a business mind, then it may be that you could, make a business out of what you love doing, which would be rather fantastic. So these are lovely little chrysanthemums. Have you been following along with my Julie and Julia, the Flower Edit project? I've been blogging about it, and you will find one video on my channel about the springtime arrangements I made. I'm trimming off the side shoots because now everything's smaller. I don't want those side shoots to be in the water, weak up the stem end. But if you go to my website, Julie Davis, what's my name again? juliedavisflowerworkshops.co.uk, and then find the blog from the menu, you'll find, I don't know how many arrangements I've done so far. She's got about 86 of them in the book. And I've done about, I don't know, 20 so far, spring ones. And of course, we're getting to summer. It's going to be arrangement. So what I'm looking for at the moment are roses. I just wish that I was brave enough to ask somebody who's growing roses in their garden if I could have their roses. One flower I'm not going to put into my mini arrangement. Oh, it is rather soggy at the end. Are these absolutely massive bloom chrysanthemums. I think they're definitely 3 weeks old. No, definitely 2 weeks old, possibly longer. It's like the flower that just won't die. That's the other thing I love about flowers as well. It's because they will eventually die, and then you can create another masterpiece. It's not like you've bought a work of art or a sculpture and you've got to enjoy it for the next 150 years. You buy your flowers, they last 10 days if you're absolutely lucky. You throw them away, put them in the compost heap, and then you go out and buy yourself another bunch. So it's this ever-changing work of art, and being seasonal as well. Again, that helps, I think, with being in the moment and being more mindful. And you know, you've got daffodils, you know it's springtime. You've got a peony, you know it's June. Holly, you know it's Christmas. So I think it's sort of, I like that as well, that you feel sort of grounded in the universe because you've got this ever-changing season, and peony season is coming to an end, and we say, the poor old peonies, we're not going to see them for another year, but actually you've got all that anticipation. It's like having another birthday, isn't it? You could celebrate the birthday of all the flowers that come into bloom as they come into bloom in your garden or as they arrive in the supermarket. So this stem is disgusting. I just squidged it and it sort of came away like seaweed. So the head still looks okay, but I think probably, Julie, enough is enough there. They're going straight into the compost bucket. So if I hadn't touched them, they could have probably, perhaps that was part of the smell as well, they could have sat there for a little bit longer. So I'm starting to fill out the side that is the slightly more attractive side of my vase. So what I'm doing is I'm just thinking about all my flowers about the same length, about this long. I've got this grid. I'm just sort of aiming my flower in. I haven't got a plan, I haven't got a purpose. I'm not doing a competition. So I think that's the other thing to think about as well. You're doing this primarily, you're doing it for your pleasure. That you're going to a flower club and you're having a nice time with your friends, or you're at a class because you want to learn something new about how to arrange. But ultimately, I think, are we all doing it because we quite enjoy it? So I don't always set out with, my arrangement's going to be this big, and this big. I just want to see where the flowers take me. And I think that's quite nice. It's a bit like, when you're buying ingredients, do you always know what you're going to cook? Don't tell me you always do. Don't tell me you shop specifically for a menu you planned through the week. I sort of have a loose idea of what I'm going to cook, but sometimes you just don't fancy it, do you? So then you're sort of reinventing what meal can I cook out of these 6 random ingredients which are going to be used for another dish? And that is what flower arranging is like. What are you going to cook in your pot of flower arranging things? And it may be, I think we sort of have a signature style. Some people always do really big arrangements, some people always petite. But because the flowers are never the same each time, and even if you did use the same flowers, you had 6 roses, 6 daffodils, 6 whatevers, they never look the same because the flowers have their individual personality. One's always going to be bigger, smaller, half dead. And you can, mix and match as you go in. And having put that first bit of greenery in, I think it's too long. So that's what it looks like on the side without the tape. You can still see the tape here. It needs something draping. And I think I prefer that side, the back side, where you can still see the tape hanging down. Never mind. Let's just keep going. If I don't point it out, nobody else is going to notice. So I've got some of the statice. Oh, it's not statice. It's limonium, the sea lavender. And it's sort of light and dainty, and whereas my other flowers are all quite sort of solid round, the same sort of size, it'll just give them a little bit of a lightweight frothiness. Let's go around, and this will actually dry if you wanted to save stuff out of your flower arrangements. I will say though that it can be quite addictive saving the stuff out of your flower arrangements. I have got at the latest count about 6 boxes of things that I've saved, and I think some of them, it's only in the last year that I have been, every so often you have to throw them away because they get a bit dusty and they break and get very brittle. So it is possible. And dried flowers are very fashionable at the moment because they're long lasting. So you could have your fresh flowers and you pick or select really carefully. You could enjoy them fresh and then have them dried. Better value for money. So there we have it. Just a little sort of cut and come again arrangement, and everything else that's in my container. The alliums there are a little bit droopy. They will go into the compost bin, so I can say goodbye to that arrangement and hello this arrangement. And I will tell you a little secret. I'm quite pleased that, thank you very much, I take your praise. And then the top tip is whenever you're arranging, don't point at everyone. Don't tell everyone what's wrong with it. You just sit back and wait for the praise to happen. And just let that be part of your confidence building as well, because other people will say, I don't know how you do that. It's all come together so beautifully. And you go, yes, I know. I've trained for hours doing it. So just take the praise. It's like they say, when when anyone gives you a compliment, you don't say, oh, your hair looks nice, or I haven't washed it for 3 days, or I love your dress, oh, it's just this old rag. You just say, thank you very much. That is really kind of you. So learn to take your praise and learn to embrace new skills and of course the confidence that is going to bring you, not just in your flower arranging, but it might give you a bit of a boost and confidence in your everyday way of life. So there are some things here I'm going to definitely throw away. That oak didn't, so I've got 2 pieces of oak that are still fresh and perky, and that piece, it was all, dead and gone. So it just goes to show that things can go, different things happen in your vase. So I am probably going to leave it there, but with one last comment. I would say by using more green in your arrangements, especially if you've got a garden and ready access to green, it really does fill the arrangement out. If you don't have a garden, that's slightly harder. So I would say on the whole, when I do a flower arrangement, it's probably 50-50 greenery and flowers. And it depends on what my budget are. But here, it's quite difficult if you don't have a garden to get hold of foliage, the greenery. Sometimes if you're lucky, a supermarket will have it. And of course, if you go to a florist, they will sell it to you by the stem. But I would say that if you have access to a garden, that really, really helps, because you can get your sort of solid green in. And then it means you don't need so many flowers to fill up your vase. But, the ultimate goal would be, with the height of luxury, would just be to have flower everywhere. And that would be really, really luxurious. Although I do like to say, just pinning it down a bit, that sometimes, again, if you've got lots of flowers going on, are you actually appreciating each individual flower? Or does it just sort of mould into, sort of merge into one another and just think, oh, that's a lovely sort of pink and white arrangement, and off you walk. And sometimes the greenery can be quite good for that, because it just gives you a sort of little buffer, like that peony there. It's got a buffer of green around it, so you sort of see the peony and then your eye moves on to the next thing there. But yes, I would say that that is one of the most useful things in flower arranging, is access to greenery. So on that end there where I said, don't point out your mistakes, but my little bit of oak I put in, the first little bit of oak I put in, is just a little bit longer than everything else. So it's sort of, I've got the arrangement and then it's got this tail piece. So if I put that chrysanthemum over the edge, it sort of bridges the gap, so it doesn't look like this bit of oak is sort of too far and away. So I'm going to wrap it up there, and levels of height. Yes, level heights as well. Yes. So the ins and outs. So we talk about recession a lot in flower arranging, not a common on the economy. But if you have all the flowers at the same height, it does look a bit like, a floral swimming hat from the 70s. So if you can get a little bit of recession, or to ensure, I don't know if you can see it there, but some of my limonium is slightly higher, so it sort of gives this haze over the top. But that is when your flower arrangements are most impressive, is being brave enough to keep your stems to different lengths. So the challenge will be, if you are a cutter and plonker, when you bought your flowers from the supermarket and they're all a standard length, and you put them in the vase, you'll find that the colour is just all on the top, and then you've just got green with the stems. But if you cut your flowers down, so for instance, your bottom flower sort of resting on the neck of your vase, and then at different heights, it just makes it look visually more appealing. Well, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. It's been lovely to have you here. I will be live again next Tuesday, 4:30 p.m. British Summer Time, and there'll be a pre-recorded video that goes live on the Monday. And if you're around at noon on Friday and you're a member of my Facebook group, there's a link to that in the notes under the video, you'll see me nattering from my kitchen. So thank you so much for joining me. Let me know what you're doing. I would love to know in the comments, you know, is flower arranging just for old women? Discuss. So I will check out, I will try and remember to put those other videos I mentioned in the description of this video. It won't be straight away though, because it's sort of time, end of dance classes and dinner time, we eat early, it's dinner time and all those kind of mummy duties and parent duties that are going on. But yes, rather lovely. See the drape? Perhaps I should just hold it like this. I'll turn it around. I do think the other side's nicer. Don't tell Julie. But yes, it's just a little pink and white. Rather lovely. Yes, I will be putting that side round to face my wall. And what I might do actually while I'm doing that, just before I go, I've got one of the peonies right at the back, and if that's going next to the wall, I'm going to move it to the front because I want to see the flower that looks the most impressive. That's much better, isn't it? So I shall say goodbye and catch up with you next time. Cheerio.